All right, so I'll get this started. I'm Jace. Here to give a little background on the Perl request challenge, pull request challenge, all the fun that I learned from it and that I think other people can. And really, we kind of thought this might be a great way to end our overall beginner's track, helping people understand, hey, there's a lot of new tools you've been taught, there's a lot of things you hopefully have learned in YAPC. What can you do with that now? How can you actually learn more throughout the year? And I really believe the pull request challenge is one of the best ways to get into that. So, to kind of talk, I got a little picture here of my son staring at the ocean, the waves coming in. Why is it hard to get involved in the community? Now, I actually want to change my talk a little bit, referencing yesterday. Who was here for the beginning lightning talks? Everybody. Anybody remember the great lightning talk that talked about how, programmer, he'd been programming for 16 years, he'd been working in isolation.
Yeah, that was great.
I'm the exact same way, and that's part of why I gave this talk. I mean, he's talking, I'm like, oh, I was going to say that same thing. So great, I get a few more minutes because just reference his, it's great. I programmed and programmed for years, and I was doing okay for myself, good job, knew what I was doing, but I was always intimidated by the community, whether it was the IRC community, which sometimes had its ups and downs, or looking at CPAN and some of these great tools, but just feeling lost at how wonderful some of them were. And I never had tools that I felt were good enough to put out necessarily on my own if I could because of job constraints. But oftentimes I just felt like I was in my own little boat out on the ocean, kind of lost in the sea, some great tools out there, which I loved borrowing from, but felt that I wasn't necessarily giving back very well. And I wasn't learning as much as I probably could have in that process. So yeah, I felt a little lost, not developing as much. So what happens? Enter the PRC. Now, the Pull Request Challenge is a program that was started by Neil Bowers. Who here is familiar with who Neil Bowers is? He's one of the great names in the pro community, partially because of the great work he's done with CPAN and testing and just helping people focus on some of the quality of the code that's out there. He's been a very vocal voice, really loves helping people out there. And so he came up with this program kind of based on what some other people are doing in challenges of trying to get people to take bite-sized chunks of how can I progress, how can I adapt. And I really hope he doesn't dislike my face swap, because next month he might give me a rough module. So what is the pull request challenge? Basically, it's a concept where, a lot of times you might look for something to do. Like I said, you're looking at that huge ocean of code, or as he has helped term, the river of CPAN. That's this huge deluge going across. And just, you get lost, everything's moving, and you don't know where to start, you don't know how to pick something, I'm not gonna pick on, hey, take DBI and say, I can rewrite that because I wanna learn something. No, you need something that you can actually do. So the idea is, let's start making it easy. We'll have a list of modules that we'll give out some assignments, and we'll give you something, if you're on this list, and say, hey, here's a module. Sometime in the next month, figure out a way to get a pull request onto this module. Okay? So that has certain things involved in it. That means the module has to be on GitHub, it has to actually be published on CPAN, and then there's some other factors that help in creating the list that we'll cover. But it's nice because it is a module that already exists, is in that river, so it's something that you might have already used, or it might be in a part of CPAN that you don't know about yet, and it's an opportunity to learn something new, something you didn't know about. And with that, that means it's already got code, so you're not re-architecting something new. You don't have to create a new project. You're not going to, come up with, hey, I need a project for CPAN, so I'm going to write a templating language or something really unique, and I'm going to create blog software, right? There's a billion and one of those already. We don't necessarily just need a new one just because you need a project. There's some great ones out there. Why don't you take the time to learn one of these and maybe see what you can do to help out with it. And part of the other reason it's designed the way it is if you aren't already familiar with GitHub, well, that's where a lot of projects are moving to, and actually the number of of issues responded to and the pull request against a project has a lot of bearing on how people perceive a language or how people perceive a module's usability. You know, if there's traction in its little sub-community, people are going to say, oh, hey, maybe this is more stable. This is something I can look at, I can use. Because how many people have gone to CPAN, gone up there and searched for some API or something you're interacting with. You get 5 responses because, of course, there's more than one way to do it. And you'll immediately order by what was the last one that had a release or the last one that had a change. Usually you want the most frequent one because, well, it's more likely that that one actually works. It's been updated. But the fact is, on Perl, especially with more stable APIs, there's a pretty good chance that some module that was last touched 3 years ago is still the best one because, hey, it just still works. But you know what? Maybe some people haven't been using it as much because the documentation was a little off or there was something odd. And just going into GitHub and helping interact with the community, that helps move it up and get some traction. So you sign up for the pull request challenge, and we'll discuss how later in the slides. And you get an assignment. Each month, you get this one thing that you can take a whole month to figure out how to interact with it. And it doesn't have to be a big change. But you need to figure out what. And of course, the first rule, you get this email at the beginning of the month that says, congratulations, you have been assigned DBI. Moves. Right? I had DBD MySQL in my first one, so I'm like, oh my gosh, I have no idea what to do. But really, don't panic. Okay? Why don't you panic? Well, first of all, the assignment email, besides that name, also comes out with some helpful links. They'll link to things such as the Meta CPAN page, which is a wealth of information about the module, previous things, other links to information about it, things such as the quality score or CPAN testers results. It'll also link to if there's any GitHub issues or RT tickets, depending on what system they're using. So there's a lot of other information it'll do and try and give you some hints of easy things that you might look at in this project. But really, once you've read that email and you've gone through a little background, there's one thing that you should do before anything else, and that is just email the authors of this module. Introduce yourselves. And this is the best thing. So many people will jump into a project, they'll get their ticket, and 3 weeks later they'll say, well, I can't figure out what to do. Well, email the owner, and there's a pretty good chance that they know something that might need some help. And if you introduce yourself and say, hey, I am totally new to Perl, but I'm just trying to get started, could you tell me how I might be able to help? Pretty good chance they're going to come back with, you know what? I've got this stuff over here that I just haven't gotten around to doing. Maybe I've got some documentation updates that need some help, or here's some simple tasks, or here's a list of known bugs that I haven't published anywhere. Right? They're usually going to be willing to feed you something to your skill level if you just talk to them about it. So with that, you search out oftentimes some of the low-hanging fruit. I mean, the idea of the pull request challenge isn't to give you huge projects that need, to dedicate your whole month to fixing some major architectural change, right? You're looking for smaller stuff that you can help out with to get to familiar and to get some pull requests going. So they've broken out, I've broken out a couple sections of low-hanging fruit. The first one, code-wise. Look for open bugs, like I mentioned. If they're in RT or if they're in the GitHub issues, go look through there. And sometimes there'll be a list in the Perl docs themselves. There will be some, hey, known bugs or edge cases, things like that. Great, those are some opportunities you could look for. And if you don't know if they're on RT or GitHub, well, there's actually a standard in the metadata that you can put in there. There's an easy pull request. You can say, great, let me point people to there, and all of a sudden Meta CPAN will start pointing and getting that information automatically. Right? You learn some of those easy pull requests that you could do to help them out. But yeah, look for to-dos or fix me or in the readmes. Sometimes you might want to look at the code and say, hey, there's some modernization. Maybe Move really well. And this is a module that is just, it's from the mid-2000s. It never had a modern object system, and you'd like to update it to Move. Well, that's an example of that might be a good idea, but definitely discuss it with the author first. Not everyone likes Move, or maybe they prefer Moose, or whatever else. But that's an opportunity when you introduce yourself. Say, hey, I have this skill set, if you want, I could help update that. Some will like it, some won't, but talk to them. Along with that, maybe it's just updated toolchain. You know, sometimes people are dependent on a CPAN module that's maybe been deprecated or it's no longer useful, or there's something nicer out there. Offer to maybe switch to that. Other times, maybe they just have code that they've implemented themselves that is better served by another part of CPAN. Right? Maybe you will say, hey, I'm going to take a whole bunch of handcrafted stuff you're doing and replace it with file path or something. Right? Pitch that to the author and say, would you accept this if I help your code? A lot of times they'll like that, or they'll at least have a discussion about it. Now, as a beginner, you might not know those. But let me tell you, after a year in the pull request challenge, you're going to know a lot more of CPAN and be familiar with some of these things. That's one place that it really helped me. It got me into some edges of CPAN that I'd never used before, and all of a sudden my code became even better. Stuff that I never thought to search CPAN for, all of a sudden had become must-haves in my toolkit. Right, it really helped me there. So if you move on to tests, you can just start out by looking how good is their coverage. Maybe you don't know the code, but you can write some tests against it pretty well. As you're learning, test it out, make sure it's working. Also look, CPAN Testers has a great grid, and your email will come with a link to it, and you can say, great, do they have any dimensions where tests are failing? Well, let me check that. Is the test wrong? Is the code wrong? How can I help there? Also, test for bugs that exist, but maybe you don't know how to fix. And this is another great one for the starters. You go into a project, and maybe they have a whole bunch of open GitHub issues, and you have no freaking clue how to solve any of those problems. I've had that where I've been given an XS module and been like totally out of my league, but yet, hey, there's some open issues against it, and I did know how to write a Perl test to reproduce the situation. Guess what? There's a lot of projects that would actually prefer that to you editing their code. And it's a great opportunity, and it's helping out the user base as well as the author. So why not look at that? Sometimes you might want to look at the tests and break out their release tests into the XT directory instead of the main directory, right? So that every end user doesn't have to run through all the release tests that are unnecessary, or pod testing, things like that. Break out the test coverage a little bit there. One that I've done for a couple people is I've added Travis support. So they're in GitHub. There's a great way you can get free Travis rundowns against their entire, every version of Perl out there. That's a great opportunity. Now, that's something that the author might not want to discuss it with them, but that can be an easy way that, hey, look, anytime a pull request comes against it, you'll automatically trigger off Travis runs against your module. That's a good idea, I think. So, other tools, running Perl Critic. Now, once again, Perl Critic is a set of suggestions, things that might be issues, but it's a chance for you to learn and then discuss it with people. Perl Critic might come up with a whole bunch of warnings that might lead you to find a bug that they didn't know about. But then again, it might just be a suggestion that the author's going to say, yeah, that's not the convention I use. So, okay. But it's a tool to be helpful, and it'll help you learn and understand why people are doing something. Also with some of the conventional tools, a good example is maybe some people would or wouldn't like being converted to Distilla, right? Some people love it, some people hate it. It's a great tool, I think, so learn to use it. Other things, documentation is a great chance. A lot of people we know have skipped over documentation as their best tool. If you're using Distilla, it makes it even easier with Podweaver, something you can learn. But maybe that's not what they want. But you can learn to edit. Sometimes it's just fixing typos. Sometimes you're actually doing things like working on a how-to. But even the best thing is working on real-world examples, right? Look at the code and say, how does this actually work? If I'm having trouble figuring out how to use your code, maybe I can give you some sets of codes beyond just a little one-liner of here's how this module is used, but actually an actual use case. Plug that into the examples directory. Right? A lot of people would love that. And then, of course, just searching. Look on Perl monks, go to Stack Overflow, and find out what people have asked about that has to do with that module. Maybe they've said, hey, this module, I can't figure out how to use it. Well, write an example to fix that. Or maybe they've found a bug. Or maybe they just asked about a problem and didn't know about this module. And so you can just help get some answers in there so Google will be able to find it and answer their question better. From there, once you have a change, you make a pull request. I mean, it's just the standard, follow the GitHub tutorial if you don't know how. Make sure you did your work in a new branch in your own fork so that all your commits are atomic. They're nice, isolation. If the person wants to, they can accept just one commit instead of your whole branch. Maybe they like that one part. So make sure they're clean and nice. Make sure you're following any contributing rules if they have a contributing rules. If they don't have a contributing rules and you talk to them but they said a bunch of stuff that were requirements, well, there's an easy pull request. Make a contributing file for them. Easy documentation. There's definitely things you can do to increase the chances of the merge. Like I said, talk to them, right? Make sure you know what they want, what any rules they have are. Make sure you haven't introduced new bugs. Make sure you haven't caused performance to crash. You know, play around with NYT Profile for hotspotting, see if you did anything. Compare in the CPANs the quality score. Make sure you're not making things worse by what you're introducing. So take some time with it, look at it. Don't just run Perl tidy and say, look, I fixed it for you, because that's going to really frustrate people. In there, though, make sure you let Neil know as you approach the problem of what you might, if you have any personal preferences. So the most common one, in XS, you know. I've been given several XS modules and been overwhelmed a bit. So there is a preference. You can say, look, I don't do C, I don't do XS, I don't do it. Let them know, and they'll make sure you don't get those modules.
Okay. Does that answer the question?
So it's playing around with that. Tell them real quick. So, anyways.
I'll talk about it. So, no, that's not a cool tool we use from the last.
Okay, that's awesome. Anyways. Yeah, the most common one is most people want to avoid XS if you don't know C, but if you do know some C or maybe just Rusty, look at that as a chance to learn, right? Don't be afraid of a module just because it has a certain name or title. You're not expected to do major architectural changes. You're looking for the small stuff, the easy stuff to get to know it, and then based on your skill level, you'll start growing. And then you can approach larger ones how you want to. So as a note, if you want to do this, first of all, we have the hackathon tonight. Does everybody know about that?
Yes.
So hackathon up there, please join us. We have food, good food, and it's thank you so much to our sponsor Hitlist for bringing that in. Plug down, that's wonderful. But you also, I mean, you don't have to do it just at the hackathon. Sign up, cpan-prc.org. There's #PR challenge in IRC. You can just email Neil and join on. There's a mailing list so we can all communicate. But definitely join us. Don't be afraid to test the boundaries of the waters. You can get very easy stuff and definitely grow. I'm very happy that this PRC is there. I was very intimidated when I first started, but you know what? It has made a huge difference in my community involvement, in my understanding of who else is out there and what other tools there are. It's been great for me. So last slide, basically, this is called the hit list. This is the basic idea. Not every module is on GitHub. Not every module that's in the river that's used is definitely maintained. There's a chance to help with that too. Go look at, Adopt Me namespace. Maybe there's a project you'd love to just take over. Right? That's a great opportunity to help out. But also you can talk to the author of any of those modules if you are one or if you know one, and just help get them into GitHub. Right? Maybe they're already in Git. They've finally advanced out of CVS, but they're maintained in one of their own many other Git hosted solutions. That's great. Get a fork up there. That way other people can see it and interact as well. Git makes that nice and easy. So thank you very much. Let's help get everyone in the river, into GitHub, and start committing. I hope everybody joins up with the PRC. We'll see you in the IRC room and be able to help each other out. Thank you.